Hello, good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here. And today, as requested by Aaron, I apologize if I murder your last name, Gyoffrey? The top 5 most OP non-premium ships. So this, of course, means Techline ships. So if you want to see your idea turned into a top 5 video, the one that we have every week, make sure to leave it in the comments down below. And if you're watching, make sure you go read the comments and give the ideas that you like a thumbs up. That way I can see which ones you guys would like to see. So before we get into that, couple of announcements. First off, we are getting very close to 40,000 subscribers. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, because when we do get there, we are going to have another milestone giveaway like we've had in the past when we hit 35, 30, 25, 20,000 subscribers. And we are under 300 subs away from that goal. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure your notifications are turned on, so when we do the giveaway, you're still around and getting notifications for that. Secondly, as one season of clan battles comes to an end, another one is on the horizon. With that being said, TSOF is recruiting. If you don't know, TSOF is the clan of the channel. We have several clans that you can join. Our main ones are T1 and T2. Those are our main 2 competitive clans. T3 is our semi-competitive clan, and T4 is our just community clan. If you guys want to join the community and not have to worry about feeling obligated to participate in clan battles or anything like that, you just want to hang out, div up, and hang out with fans of the channel, that's what T4 is for. If any of those sound interesting to you, we have everything again from competitive clans, semi-competitive clans, to just community clans. Make sure to check out the application link in the description down below. Make sure you read the directions when filling out the application and fill out all the pertinent information. Alright, on to the list. So, top 5 OP non-premium ships. So these again are mostly Techline ships that, well, are pretty busted. And right before we get going, just again, this is all 125% my opinion. I'm not saying this is the definitive top 5 most OP non-premium ships list. I'm just saying these are what I would consider to be the top 5 most OP non-premium ships. And again, feel free to disagree with me. It's my opinion. It's your opinion. World will be boring if we all shared the same opinion. So let's go ahead and get started at number 5, which is the Tier 10 British battleship, the Conqueror. Now, if I was filming this video about 2.5, 3 years ago, Conqueror would absolutely be number 1 on this list. If you went around for old Conqueror, good God. That thing, I do not know how that ship made it out of testing and they felt good enough to release it in-game. It was stupidly broken. So for those of you that weren't around back then, Old Conqueror didn't have a citadel. She had one, but it was so far underneath the water that only at extreme ranges with plunging fire, and the ship had to be turning fairly hard over too, could you citadel it with any type of consistency. And it still had the old, the super heal that it has today. So you couldn't citadel this thing. It didn't even, once you finally worked so hard to get its health low, they could just slap T and get a new ship. Ah, man. Want an 80-second cooldown time too on her heal. So, yeah. And you could still get the concealment down to, I believe it was 11.5 or 11.6 kilometers. A battleship with 11.6 kilometer concealment. I mean, I know today we have incomparable, but at least that ship you can sneeze on it and, remove all of its health. Conqueror, you couldn't do that. So survivability-wise, she was incredibly tough, especially if you're in another battleship trying to deal with it. Now, onto her guns. Of course, the Conqueror has British BBHE, which has amazing alpha, and has, I'm not sure if it's that, like, the splash damage radius of it's so big, or if it just has a special built-in ripping property, but man, you can eat 1 or 2 salvos from a Conqueror and all of your AA is gone. Your AA is gone, your secondary guns, their gunners are just vaporized, your ship's on fire in 3 or 4 places. On 12 16-inch guns. At Tier 10, which, 16-inch guns are relatively small by Tier 10 standards, but with this level of HE fire spam that you've got going on here with the Conqueror, with the British BBHE, with the high alpha and the high fire chance per shell, yeah, now, while it's true, Conqueror's guns aren't really that accurate, you don't have to be. with the such a high fire chance, because again, British BBHE, you only really need like 1 or 2 to land, and you're probably starting a fire. In the game watching the background, I think I finished this game with, I think, almost 20 fires with the Conqueror. Now, that is its HE. Its AP is also pretty darn good too. She has the British BB short fuse AP, which means that the shells have a shorter fuse time, which means that she doesn't overpin as much as other battleships do. So if you do catch a broadside cruiser and you have your AP loaded, you're probably going to Citadel them, or at least pin them instead of overpinning them like you would in another battleship, because they have the normal fuse time. So that's also very useful too. That also means that when it comes to other battleships and heavily armored ships as well, again, you'll be getting more consistent pins rather than overpins with that short fuse AP. Her A was pretty decent too back in the day, but of course with the CV rework, that's all changed. Her A is all in medium and long range AA. It's literally all Bofors. There is no short range AA on the Conqueror. So what changed to drop her down to number 5? Well, they raised her Citadel, and they nerfed her concealment. Her original base concealment was 14.76 kilometers, which again, with all the skills and modules, you could get that down to 11.5, 11.6. They raised it to 15.66 kilometers, which now means her maximum conceal is 12.3, which is still very, very good. And they also nerfed the recharge time on her heal. It's no longer 80 seconds, it's now 120 seconds. So it's a bit more balanced now. She's still by far one of the easiest tech line ships to farm damage with. You can absolutely just sit in the back with Conqueror and just sling HE all day and easily get 120, 150,000 damage game out of your Conqueror. It's still incredibly frustrating to fight a Conqueror, because of course, you know, that they set 2 fires on you, you damage con that, and just another, you know, 1 round of their HE, they've got another 2 or 3 fires set on you just like that. So now you got another 2 or 3 fires set on you, and you're just stuck there because you just used damage con. However, nowadays you can at least retaliate a lot easier, because again, her Citadel is much higher. It's much easier to Citadel. She still has the dry dock heal, so if you do Citadel the thing, it will manage to heal a good chunk of that back. But again, so much better than back in the day when you could not Citadel this thing at all. So not as busted as it used to be, still incredibly strong, and I don't really like HE spamming battleships in the first place, so that's all this thing is. I mean, again, the AP is still pretty decent, but again, use HE, find yourself easily 150k damage every single round. Alright, going down to number 4, we have the Tier 7 Soviet battleship, the Sinop. This one even has OP in its name, as many a player were very, very quick to point out during the, God, I forget what season number it was, but it was the Tier 7 ranked season. Good lord, this ship was everywhere because she is that strong. So Sinop is a Tier 7 battleship with 9 16-inch guns. Yeah, that's, wow. That's a lot of firepower. Now, if you look at other 16-inch gun ships at Tier 7, like the Colorado had to give up, like, everything else about it in order for her to have 16-inch guns, just her 8 16-inch guns. She's slow, she's chunky, she's pretty frustrating to play. Sinop, despite having 9 16-inch guns, is great. She has Soviet battleship armor, which is pretty darn good. Now, this is before they start to get some of their higher tier bullshit armor. So if you do catch a Sinop broadside, you are probably going to Citadel it. But a good Sinop player won't let you find its broadside, because it's like all Soviet battleships, once they're bow in or slightly angled bow in to you, good luck. Good luck dealing with that. Now, not only is it 16-inch shells at Tier 7, it's Soviet 16-inch shells. So they have the Soviet characteristics about them, and she does have the Soviet battleship dispersion gimmick, which is the closer you are to the target, the better your dispersion is, or the tighter your shell groups are, I guess is a better way to describe it, with 16-inch guns at Tier 7. Now, Tier 7 games still today are fairly close. The Sinop best performs from about 14-15 kilometers in, which is perfectly reasonable for a Tier 7 engagement, and boy, oh boy, when these shells connect, and they do often connect, you are going to absolutely just be taking a dump on whatever it is that you are fighting, which is why this ship was so popular during that Tier 7 rank season. 16-inch guns with a good armor scheme with a pretty darn decent top speed as well. She used to be able to go 29 knots. That wasn't something that was nerfed back in the day, I think. And, God, was that in testing or was it something afterwards? But either way, 27 knots at Tier 7 is perfectly... That's actually pretty darn fast for Tier 7. Most battleships are around 26, 27 knots at Tier 7, especially when you consider like the Colorado stuck at 20, and you're still in other nations' tech trees when they're still kind of in that dreadnought-y, post-dreadnought-y era, when many of their ships can only go 25, 26 knots, 27, throw their speed flag on there, going 29 knots now. So a ship that can almost go 30 knots that has Soviet 16-inch guns, Soviet armor scheme, and has the Soviet damage con. Gets a quick cooldown damage con as well. Now, she used to also have a Sigma parameter of 1.6 that has since been nerfed down to 1.5, and her maximum AP shell damage was decreased from 12,950 down to 12,500 now. So she's been hit with a nerf back quite a few times, but as you can see in the footage going on in the background right now, this ship is still really darn strong. I goof up hard in a very early stage in the match you're watching in the background, and I get out of it just fine, and I managed to keep fighting for the rest of the match, and I managed to come in at number 1 at the end of the match, despite goofing up so hard at the beginning. The ship is still very, very survivable, and her 16-inch guns hit very, very, very hard. So for her tier, this is one of the, I'd argue, probably the strongest Tier 7 battleship in the game still. And this is one that I do like the setup. She is very strong. She is fairly busted, but the design of her armor layout, she makes for kind of like a battleship player's dream. An incredibly tanky, decently quick, hard-hitting battleship. I do like it, but I will agree, she is busted. Not as busted as she used to be, but still pretty darn busted for a Tier 7 battleship. You could have easily improved one or two characteristics about the ship, and this ship could have fit in at Tier 8 perfectly well if we didn't have the Vladivostok. Alright, going down to number 3, we have the French super ship, the Condé. So, if you played the super ship clan battle season, you probably hate this thing. This thing was everywhere that season. And man, I've made a video on this in the past going into details of why this thing is absolutely busted and the target of a lot of my anger. And nothing has changed. They haven't nerfed the ship at all just yet. Now, granted, it is a super ship, and super ships are literally meant to be, here's an OP ship, so pay us a bunch of credits to buy the ship, and then potentially lose credits every match unless you have a pretty darn good game to play an outright busted ship. However, the Condé, in my opinion, is one of the more busted super ships. Now, you're probably thinking, well, why isn't the Eagle on this list? Well, I don't have the Eagle, and I don't put ships on these lists that I haven't played yet. I maybe have done that once or twice when talking about ships that have been removed or ships that should return to the game. But as far as ships that are actually in the game, I don't put ships on these lists that I don't have, and I'm not paying upteen million credits for a carrier that I probably won't play more than once or twice for a video, you know? Especially when it's a situation where I'll be losing credits playing it. But you could throw Eagle in this spot here if you really wanted to, because the Eagle, from what I've heard, from what I have seen, is pretty stupidly busted. But anyway, the Condé, the ship that's actually on this list, the Condé is a super ship that has a button that removes the consequences of its own actions. So one main feature of the super ships, especially the super cruisers, is that they have an alternative firing mode that's basically an autoloader from World of Tanks, where you can get several shots off in fairly quick succession. However, the trade-off for using this is that they have a reload time that's longer than even battleships after this burst. You know, the concept being it's an autoloader, you gotta reload the autoloader, so it takes longer than just, you know, putting one shell in the gun breech and then firing. However, the Condé has the French reload booster, which means that you can use this autoloader, get 2 salvos off in very quick succession. Keep in mind, this thing does have Henri's guns. So you have 240mm guns with French HE and French AP, and you can get 2 rounds of this off, 24 shells off, in, I think it's like 1.5 seconds. pop the reload booster, and rather than have a 40+ second reload time, you now have a 20-second reload time, which is perfectly workable, and then you can do it again. Rather than having to think about, okay, do I want to use my burst here? Because if, this doesn't kill him, I'm going to be kind of screwed, because now I got to wait 40 seconds before I can get my next salvo off. You don't have to do that. You just hit the reload booster, and whoop, there it goes. They could easily remove this gimmick from the ship, and this would still be probably one of the best high-tier cruisers in the game. That's how busted this ship is. So that's my main issue with it. Besides that, it does still do all the French cruiser things. Very fast, very maneuverable. She has a 3-minute engine boost. She has torpedoes, hydro, French space armor, where you can shoot the thing in the broadside, flat broadside arm from 13 kilometers away with a 20-inch gun, and you'll get a torpedo protection hit. But then you shoot it from like 20 kilometers away, and you shoot like you actually manage to hit its rudder, and then the whole ship explodes. It does have that French armor. Sometimes it's totally in your advantage, sometimes it's totally in your disadvantage. And again, with that reload booster, or the not the reload booster, the autoloader, you can easily punish ships that, in most cases, sure, they might have eaten a lot of damage because they slipped up, showed you broadside, and you blasted them. In situations where, you'd lose like half of your health and be crippled for the rest of the match, you're just dead now because you made one mistake. And also combine that with the HE. Say again, it's still French HE. It's decent HE. You have 2 fires on you, put the fires out, and then they hit that autoloader after your damage con runs off, and now you have 4 fires on you because 24 shells hit you with a pretty decent fire chance. So yeah, the ship was annoying as hell in clan battles. It's pretty darn annoying to deal with in random battles as well. Thankfully, it seems to be the general consensus of the community, because not many a ship gets focused down harder than the Conde, as you can see in the footage you're watching in the background here. So yeah, will they nerf this thing? Probably not, because it's a super ship and it's kind of meant to be busted, but absolutely she is one of the most busted ships in the game. Sealord, what could possibly be more busted than the Conde? Well, our number 2 which is the Tier 9 Japanese destroyer, the Kitakaze. This ship is stupid. She has just insane levels of DACA at Tier 9. Like, this thing's better than the Harugumo for a tier for tier. Like, it's so stupid how good this ship is and how little this ship has been nerfed. But by little this ship has been nerfed, I mean they've nerfed it once, as far as I know. One time. And it was a slight concealment nerf, if I'm remembering correctly. So, the Kitakaze is the Tier 9 Japanese gunboat. She is, man, very, very, very good. You could easily, like I said, be grinding up the Japanese gunboat line and just stop here at the Kitakaze, because this is essentially where the line peaks with the gunboats. The Harugumo is very nice. Don't get me wrong, the Harugumo is good. She's very easy to play as well. This whole line, they're not really destroyers. They're kind of the first, how we have the German split DDs that are essentially either very large destroyers or small light cruisers. These came out before them, and they are essentially, especially when you start getting up to high tier, very small light cruisers are absolutely massive destroyers. So I'm just double checking what I told you guys, and yeah, the only thing that was nerfed on the ship was a concealment nerf. It went down from 7.56 to 7.76. Nothing has changed. And she also has the Japanese guns that allow her to pin 30 millimeters of armor. These are the 100 millimeter guns that fire at 1,000 meters a second. So that allows such a small caliber gun to penetrate to 30 millimeters of armor, because they're going so flippin' fast. Which means you don't really need IFHE unless you really want to be penetrating the bow and stern of battleships, because 30 millimeters, that's pretty much all the cruisers taken care of, and more than enough to deal with battleship superstructure. And with the volume of fire too, it's so stupid. You'll easily be setting plenty of fires with these shells once you get going. Now, the only real downsides to this ship are that it is massive. It is very large. It's not very maneuverable, but you do get an engine boost to make up for that. You do only have one set of torpedoes, but you do get the torpedo reload booster, which once you use it gives you a 5-second reload time on your torpedoes rather than the full minute and 20 minute and 40 seconds, 171 seconds. Yeah, that's it. That you have for the reload for these torpedoes. So with this volume of fire that this ship can spew out, I mean, everything melts. Other DDs, God help them if they try to push you and they have you, I'm sorry, and you have them spotted, or someone has them spotted for you and you're in your smoke screen, because it does have smoke screen as well, or some poor cruiser or battleship that has to push into you, you are going to melt them down. It's not, are you going to melt them down? It's how long is it going to take you to melt them down, especially if you're in a good position with your smoke up, or if you're able to abuse island cover and lob shells over the island. You're going to melt them down, either through fires, through pins, or whatever. And I guess, yeah, sure, you could take IFHE if you really just want to get good, consistent damage in with the ship rather than depending upon the fires, and you're absolutely just murdering everything at that point. So, yes, what could possibly be worse than this? Well, friends, that's where we have the number one, the Tier 10 Japanese heavy cruisers out. Nope, it's the Nakhimov. Of course you knew it's the Nakhimov. The Tier 10 Soviet aircraft carrier. Man, Nakhimov has... Man, she has gotten such a reprieve because of the submarines. All the Nakhimov mains are probably really enjoying the submarine release right now, because very few people are spewing their anger towards CVs right now. It's still mostly focused on submarines, so Nakhimov players are enjoying probably the next month or so until everyone goes back to hating CVs again. But yep, this ship is ridiculously easy to do very well, and I'm not a good CV player. I'm better than what I was a year ago. I've been trying to improve my CV gameplay, but yeah, even someone like me that's not a CV main can do very, very, very well in the Nakhimov. Now, with the Russian CVs, I do like some of the ideas they tried out in the line, and it does address a lot of issues that players have with CVs. The planes all attacking at once means that shooting down planes actually does something now. Because before, if we're talking about, let's say, I don't know, any other Tier 10 CV, the Richthofen, when the Richthofen skip bombers are coming in at you, you got to shoot down the whole squadron before you start to actually take planes away from the attack wave. Because let's say there's, 4 planes in the attacking squadron, but there's 12 planes in the squadron. Well, that means you can shoot down up to 6 planes before you even start to put a dent into the squadron that's attacking, because the planes are just going to get replaced by planes in the reserve. So sure, you might shoot down 4 or 5 planes, but it doesn't feel like you're doing anything because the full salvo is still coming towards you from the planes. But with the Nakhimov and the Russian CVs, all the planes attack at once. So if there's 7 planes in the attacking squadron, you shoot down 3 planes, well, you just took 3 bombs away from hitting your ship. And I like that idea. It gives AA value again. Well, I mean, AA does have its value, but it takes a long time before you actually see the effects of your AA on the CV, because you have to whittle down those squadrons to where the CVs has to be launching with incomplete squadrons before they can start to, really take planes away from the attacking runs that are coming at your ship. So I like that idea. They just overtuned it a lot with the Nakhimov. Now, they have removed 1 plane from the Nakhimov's torpedo bomber and skip bomber squadron, so that has helped out a little, but the alpha on these planes are still incredibly high, and good CV players can absolutely just ruin anybody's day with these planes, especially with the skip bombers and DDs. Oh my god. Now, the idea of the skip bombers is that there's 3 bounces in the Nakhimov skip bomber reticle, and the more the skip bombs bounce, the more accurate it becomes. So ideally you want to make sure you get your last reticle line on the enemy ship, which is of course a further distance away, which in turn gives the enemy ship time to dodge and maneuver. So ideally that's what you do. However, if you just drop the bombs on them on the first line and remove like 10k from the DD because you just dropped 7 bombs on their head, who cares? It's really funny that this ship is actually one of the best CVs to do anti-DD duties in, because, again, you wouldn't think it is from the way it was designed to be played, but again, just drop the bombs right on them, and what are they going to do? Live? Yeah, and the torpedo bombers, I actually really like the torpedo bombers. It's a neat mechanic. It's a bit different than the other torpedo bombers, because you want to approach the enemy ship from the bow or the stern, or at an angle from the bow or the stern with these torpedoes, because they have a very tight dispersion group, so it's a fist of torpedoes coming at you. And they have such a long arming distance that on pretty much any ship that doesn't go 20 knots at tier 10. If you try to attack them from the sides, they're going to easily be able to outrun them because you have to lead them so much with the kilometer arming distance. So they'll either just outrun them or turn in or out and simply maneuver out of the way. But going in from the bow or the stern, that's a bit better for your dispersion. At the same time too, still gives the enemy ship time to maneuver and mitigate the damage, and again, shooting down planes from the squadron do help mitigate that damage as well. The rocket planes are really strong too. They're similar in the tiny TIMs that the Midway has, so they hurt like hell when they do connect, and you're firing a very large amount of rockets at the enemy ship, and you probably chunk them for 15-16k if you pull it off correctly. Now, the Nakhimov itself has pretty darn good plane regen rates. I feel like they could tweak that a little bit, and that will help calm down the Nakhimov spam by a lot. I mean, if you're watching the gameplay in the background, I am constantly just sending out 2 squadrons. And I don't even start to run out of planes until very late in this game. And this game went on for a lot longer than most tier 10 games do. And this is me playing, someone that's not the best CV player ever, and I'm doing perfectly fine. I don't have to worry about my planes. Oh look, my torpedo bombers aren't full. Oop, I forgot to use my rocket planes for like the past 5 minutes. Let me go send one of those squadrons out. By the time they get there and they get back, my torpedo bombers are ready again. The ship is super strong, very good when you are close and into the action, because you have the rocket assist to take off with the planes. They take off from the catapult. They have the rockets. So for a very brief time, they're going like 250 knots, which is way faster than their idle speed. They're supposed to be slow, low health planes too, but again, just the sheer number of them and the range at which their ordnance is dropped, you don't really care too much because you don't get into that high DPS close range AA really. So when you get closer to the action with that rocket assisted takeoff, you are absolutely just vomiting planes, just kicking whatever your target is to death with the Nakhimov. And yep, absolutely frustrating ship to play against, and in my opinion, the most busted non-premium ship in the game. So guys, let me know what you guys would have added to this list in the comments down below. What would have you changed? What is your top 5 most OP non-premium ships? Let me know in the comments down below. If you guys enjoyed, make sure to drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. On the way to 40,000 subscribers, make sure to subscribe and turn the notifications on so you're sticking around and are notified when that does happen. Hope you guys enjoyed. Have a wonderful Monday. Have a wonderful rest of your week. And hope to catch you guys in the next one.